new reporting that shows that the Department of Homeland Security had people raising the alarm heading into the January 6th protest turned riot turned sacking of the Capitol, that hey guys, this is going to turn bloody. Now I think there are a couple, and we could put that tear sheet up here. I think there are a couple different ways to look at this. One is that this analyst was dead on, and good for them for doing the Googling that led to this.
Yeah.
Secondly, though, why did they need this analyst to do this? And what is it about the bureaucracy that they couldn't see it? Everybody knew January 6th was going to get violent. Like it was,
or that it had serious potential to get
yes,
violent.
it was being organized out in the open on Facebook and Parler and Twitter and like all sorts of other forums that are not at all secret or require passwords to get into. Anybody who was remotely paying attention knew that it was going to be a big day.
Yeah, and let's not even forget the fact that we now know they had people that were in the inner circles of the Oath Keepers.
What's the point of that?
They have 5 sources inside the Proud Boys and like 8 inside the Oath Keepers. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but at the Oath Keepers, we covered the trial last week, they were super close to Stuart Rhodes. They were like, the FBI, the FBI source was like one of the top people in the Oath Keepers. So let's not be ridiculous and say they didn't have any idea what was going to happen. Whether or not this person had went on what Yahoo's excellent report describes as a literal fishing expedition, because he was actually looking for fishing holes in DC, and he actually ended up finding this blueprint of a plot to storm the Capitol. That's from Yahoo. And, quote, execute members of Congress and law enforcement officers to prevent the certification of electoral votes to make Joe Biden the next president. Okay, this is insane. And Yahoo says it turns into a, quote, failed 16-day effort to sound the alarm and push the various parts of the DHS intelligence apparatus into action. The office created in the wake of 9/11 to share intelligence more broadly and prevent another catastrophic attack failed to share its intelligence ahead of the January 6th U.S. Capitol riot. It had the intelligence. DHS has the intelligence. The FBI has the intelligence because they have human sources in the inner circle of the Oath Keepers, by the way, one of which had a heart attack before on the plane on his way to testify in the trial. It makes me sick to my stomach to think about. I watched the documentary from Nancy Pelosi's daughter that aired on HBO this week, and there's some new footage of, whatever you think of Nancy Pelosi, there's some new January 6th footage of House leadership and Senate leadership. Yeah, she's with them. Her camera's rolling the entire time, and you're seeing sort of from the speaker's office, that was a really good vantage point at what was happening outside. It was much better than what I could see on the day. And it was like, when you're looking at that footage, when you're looking at the buildup to it, all of the clips of the stupid stuff Trump was saying in the months before it happened, it's just remarkable to know that we had sources, intelligence sources in these groups, and this DHS intelligence person is screaming and saying, look, we have it right here. We have it right here.
And in the lead up to 9/11, so DHS was created out of 9/11
right.
Because they had failed to share information and act on tips and information that they had obtained. But one of the problems that they identified was an obvious one, that a bunch of these analysts didn't speak Arabic and didn't also understand the idioms, didn't know the different forums that they were supposed to be monitoring. This thing was planned on social media in English. Like, so you didn't need a whole lot of expertise. That's why this 21-year-old kid.
And we knew by the way, we knew who was doing it. Like, the groups were not a mystery, whereas it's a needle in a haystack with 9/11.
A couple of the things that they cite in the Yahoo article are tweets from @RealDonaldTrump. Trump.
Yeah.
Like, those are not secret. Like, those are not secret communiques. And it does show the way that that Trump's tweets would then lead to like this explosion of organizing activity. December 19th, I think he's like, this thing was rigged. Everybody come to DC, and then it was the next day that the analyst is like looking for the fishing hole and stumbles on, quote, witnessed upwards of 500 pages worth of potential threats to national security, including people urging others and discussing how to smuggle illegal weapons into the nation's capital and avoid detection by law enforcement. The DHS analysts also saw a discussion of references of overthrowing the U.S. government by force, sparking a second civil war, and veiled credible threats of violence toward other U.S. persons who were perceived as enemies, specifically members of Congress and other federal employees. Yeah, I mean, I saw that stuff. I'm not a DHS analyst. Everybody saw that stuff.
Well, again, like they're seeing posts of people saying we're going to bring hooks and ropes for taking down fencing. And again, I'm like pretty much of the opinion that this wasn't a finely tuned plan that was just set into motion. You know, someone gives the signal and you know to do A, B, and C. It was just that people were saying, I'm willing to die for this. That's what some of these DHS people, this is what the DHS person is finding in some of these posts. People saying, I've done my last will and testament. I'm willing to die for this country. We may have to storm the Capitol, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you get there and you can just walk in because the police are, they did horrible things to get past the police. They shoved them to the ground. But if that was all it took for the mob to overwhelm the police that are guarding the Capitol of the United States, they've completely spiraled out of control. It is entirely their fault, but there is no excuse for the failure of the law enforcement on that day. And I think the really important context here is this is all coming out as the January 6th committee. Leaks are coming from the January 6th committee saying the report is going to be too focused on Trump and not focused enough on the law enforcement angle that was gathered by the January 6th committee. So the January 6th committee for a while now, months, has had people doing research on the law enforcement failures. And they are upset. They're leaking to the media because they're so upset that those aren't going to be included in the final report that is delivered before the end of the year, around the end of the year when the committee is formally dissolved. So what are Democrats on the J6 committee? What is Liz Cheney on the J6 committee not wanting to say about the law enforcement failures? Because this is a stunning report.
My assumption is always first to look at bureaucratic incompetence.
Yes, of course.
But if somebody, but if I'm talking to somebody who's skeptical of that and says, to your question, why didn't they look into this? Well, they are covering the butts of their kind of like allies in the deep state would be one explanation. But you couple why didn't they look into that with the kind of argument that you hear from the skeptics, which is they were actually okay with this because it presented them with the rationale to then bring the iron fist and crack down on this thing that was getting out of control. And the level and the depth of the incompetence, it makes it so hard to counter that with, no, it was probably incompetence. You're like, really? It's that bad? They're really that bad? And it's like, well, were you around for 9/11? Like, it's billions of dollars just getting flushed down the toilet every day. People to just push papers around and not actually doing. Like they point out that it took a week. So he identifies all, or she, the analyst identifies all these things.
Analyst is not named for safety concerns per the DHS.
Right. So they identify all of these things. They're like, hey, let's do something about this. You say, well, we need official Googlers to find this stuff. There's a whole open source investigative team. Open source means stuff you can find on Google. Yeah. And so they're put in an urgent request on that. The analyst follows up every single day. It took a week to get that research going because they had just implemented a new system. They're always implementing new systems. Right. And so he or she didn't file their TPS report the right way. And so a week later, they start their Googling. And they just still never sent their Google search results on to the Capitol Police. But come on, Capitol Police! Like they're around the Capitol every day. The crowds were building throughout the week. Yeah, like it was in your face. You didn't need to even have a Parler account.
To know, well, at the very least, to know that this is like a recipe for potential disaster.
Just put a bunch of people around the Capitol, and they're not going to get in. Like, I think you're right that there's been no proof presented in the Oath Keepers plans that they had a methodical plan of breaking into the Capitol. It seemed more if they did order it, they had the will, and it was an opportunistic moment because there were a bunch of calls between Rhodes and some other deputies and then right after those calls are made, they searched the Capitol. But they only do that in an opportunistic way because they're like, oh wait, all they have is some bike racks up.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, having been there, what clearly was happening is people realized they could get past the police, and they were shocked to realize they could get into the Capitol. People who were breaking into the Capitol were like, is this really happening? Like, am I really just getting past the police here? And they were beating them and doing abhorrent things to do it, but they were surprised that it was that easy as it was. And I just, the more that we get these reports out, the more that it's like, first of all, that day could have been. There was a lot of loss of life that stemmed from that day. One person was killed in the riot, but my God, that day could have been even worse. And all of our money is going to these layers of incompetence. The DHS, the FBI, both of which we know they had more information that there should have been a bigger security presence. So just completely disgusting all the way around.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now. And Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.